So you might not have noticed, but I just broke a mill and I need to change it out. Turns out this ebony that I'm using is very hard, harder than most ebony I've used in the past. And I'll go through the process again of adjusting the depth of cut. Hello, welcome to this video production of the Northeastern Woodworkers Association. I'm Ray Puffer and I'm welcoming you to my home shop here in Watervliet. This presentation will be focused on the mother of pearl inlay techniques that I've developed over the past several years. I learned inlay work when I started building banjos and guitars several years ago, and I learned most of what I'm going to show you from Ken Evans. The kinds of things that I've done include musical instruments. This is a banjo that I built, and you can see the inlay work on the peg head and on the fretboard. And I'll show some details of it here in the camera for you to see. This is the peg head and the fretboard inlay, and there's also inlay on the heel of the neck. I also have made a number of jewelry items with mother of pearl inlay. This is an example of a pendant that happens to be the Chinese character for righteousness, and this will go on to a necklace for my granddaughter. I make a lot of ring boxes and jewelry boxes. This is a jewelry box custom made for an individual, and those are the Chinese characters for fearlessness. This is an end grain box made out of bubinga. The subject of making end grain boxes on the lathe would be a good topic for another video. Mother of pearl inlay is used in furniture making, in jewelry boxes, accessories, musical instruments, and it is a technique that's been used for thousands of years. There's evidence of mother of pearl inlay being used by the Egyptians 4,000 years ago. It was used extensively in architectural features in Egypt. So what is mother of pearl? Mother of pearl is the iridescent lining of the shells of certain mollusks, including pearl oysters, freshwater mussels, and abalone. It is made of a composite material from calcium carbonate, which happens to be what coral reefs are made from, and a secretion from the mollusk which is called nacre. And these are microscopic layers of depositions on the inside of the shell and continues on for the entire life of the mollusk. I'll show you some examples here. In this slide you can see abalone shells. This is one type of abalone, this is another type of abalone. And here is the shell from a pearl oyster. And you can see the iridescence in those shells. Mother of pearl typically comes in several different colors. You can get mother of pearl which is gold colored, white colored, and this is the green and blue characteristic of abalone. Let's talk about the materials that we're going to be using in the demonstration today. Starting with the box. This is a box that I will use for the inlay. This is a Bubinga end grain box turned on the lathe, and I have cut a recess to receive the inlay substrate material in the top of the box. It will end up looking something like this. Second, the substrate that I'll be putting the inlay in is a piece of ebony. This ebony I've turned on the lathe and made into a flat disc. I'll be cutting a pocket in this inlay substrate to receive the mother of pearl inlay. By the way, ebony is quite expensive, and if you don't have ebony but you want to practice, you can always use substitute materials. Here are two substitute materials that can be used. The white colored material is American holly, and the brown material happens to be apple wood from my trees here on my property. And these materials are characteristic that they have very, very tight grain structure, very similar to the grain structure of ebony. And when you ebonize these materials using a dye, such as a trans tint dye, or you could actually use liquid shoe polish. When you ebonize the materials, it's very, very difficult to tell them apart from real ebony. The next thing that we'll be working with is a piece of mother of pearl. This happens to be gold colored mother of pearl. And the mother of pearl you can either get pre-cut, as this is, or you can just buy it in sheet form like this, in whatever color you want. And you can either cut your own designs in the mother of pearl, or you can buy them pre-cut. If you're going to cut your own, you would use a jeweler's saw with a very fine tooth blade on it, and you would trace your design onto the mother of pearl and then cut it out like I have started on this piece. I'm not going to demonstrate cutting the mother of pearl in this demo. I'm going to use pre-cut mother of pearl, but one thing to keep in mind, a safety issue, if you're going to cut your own mother of pearl, make sure you use a respirator, because the dust from filing, sanding, or cutting the mother of pearl can get in your lungs, and it's just as hazardous as asbestos. So you have to be very, very careful about that. Once it goes into your lungs, it's not coming out. Okay, let's talk about the process. We use many tools in doing mother of pearl inlay, and as I use each tool, I'll discuss them in turn. And at the end of this video, there will be a screenshot that will show you the sources of supply on where you can get the materials and the tools that I use for mother of pearl inlay. We need to start by preparing the mother of pearl inlay that we're going to use. In this particular case, I'm going to use a pre-cut piece of mother of pearl, gold mother of pearl, and this comes from Luthier's Supply, from Andy and Paul DePaul out in Springfield, Oregon, and they also have a shop in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, where they cut most of these mother of pearl inlays. I need to prepare this. It comes on a cardboard backer, and I need to prepare it so that I can make an outline of this onto the substrate I'm going to use. So I'll just be starting to cut away this cardboard with shears. And I have to keep the mother of pearl on the cardboard backer because I need to maintain the orientation of the different pieces of mother of pearl. Once I get most of the cardboard cut away, then I'll start refining my cutout using an X-Acto knife. So I'm going to come in here with an X-Acto knife and cut away excess cardboard. Getting as close to the mother of pearl as possible. I think that anything within a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch of the edge of the mother of pearl is fine for our purposes. And if you have a very intricate piece of mother of pearl, it's not necessary to cut into every little opening in the material. So now I have traced the outline of the mother of pearl, and you can see here that I'm pretty close to the mother of pearl, but this will serve as a template for laying out where I'm going to do the inlay on the substrate. I need to hold the substrate in place, and I'm going to do that using double-sided tape. I will put some double-sided tape on the back of the substrate, and then I will tape the substrate to the jeweler's, I think you call it a pin block, this piece of wood that's used for cutting and processing by jewelers. So now I have the ebony substrate held in place, and the inlay is going to go right here. Get it centered. And now I'm going to mark around the outside of the inlay using a machinist scribe. You can also use a scratch awl if you don't have a machinist scribe. And I'm going to trace right around the outside of this cardboard backer. Be sure not to move your inlay while you're doing this process, or else you'll have problems when you come to make your pocket. So I now have transferred the pattern from the mother of pearl to the substrate, except I can't see it. So to help me see exactly what I've done, I'm just going to use some chalk and now I can see exactly where I have to cut. In order to cut a pocket in the ebony substrate here, I'm going to be using a Dremel tool. This is a Dremel Model 400 XPR Dremel tool, on which I've mounted a router base. This router base is you can get from Amazon, or you can get it directly from Stuart McDonald, which is a company that supplies tools and materials for making guitars primarily, and cost about $78 the last I saw. It's designed to provide very precise adjustment of the tool so that you get a uniform depth of cut. This is used extensively in building guitars and banjos because there is a lot of inlay work used in the rosettes around the sound hole on a guitar, as well as on the neck and the back resonators of banjos. Now, it's important that you adjust the tool properly. The tool that I'm using here is a 1/32 of an inch diameter end mill, and the end mills I get from MSC, Industrial Supply Company. Again, that information will be on at the end of this presentation. The tool has to be adjusted, the height of the tool, to match the thickness of the mother of pearl inlay. And so I'm checking the depth of cut by putting that mother of pearl right onto the base of this router base. And I see that I've got it pretty much at the right height. You want the tool adjusted so that it's at the thickness or slightly deeper than the thickness of the mother of pearl inlay. If it stands proud of the surface too much, then you're going to squeeze out all the epoxy that you use, and it may not attach properly to the substrate. When I do the cutting of the pocket, I cut the line. I don't try to stay inside the line. I want to take the line. That way I'm sure that the pocket's going to be big enough to receive the inlay. So here we go. We're going to do some cutting. I see that the tip of the previous mill is embedded in the wood, so I need to get rid of that. Now we'll see how we go. So I have traced around the outside of the template, and now what I'm doing is removing all the material in the center of the pocket to accept the mother of pearl. So I have removed the bulk of the material from the pocket, and now I'm just going to come in here and make sure there aren't any little pieces of material left in here that would cause problems with the inlay sitting flat. That looks pretty good. Now let's see whether or not I have any problems here. No, that's going to fit. Now that we have the pocket cut in the ebony substrate, we need to get the mother of pearl removed from the backer material, but we don't want to lose the orientation of the multiple pieces of mother of pearl in this character. So the way I do that is I will just take a piece of wrapping tape and I will press that onto the top side of the inlay and make sure that it's very well attached to the mother of pearl. And then I'm going to put that into water and let the water dissolve the water-based adhesive that holds the mother of pearl to the cardboard backer. And while I'm waiting for that to happen, I can then go about mixing the epoxy that I'm going to use to hold the mother of pearl into the ebony. And when I do that, the epoxy that I use is DevCon 2-ton epoxy. This is a slow set epoxy. It has about a 15-minute working time. You do not want to use the quick set epoxy, because if you do, you can be pretty sure that you're going to get almost placed properly, and then it's going to set up and you're going to be left with a piece of scrap. So use a slow set epoxy for the inlay. And we're going to use furniture powder to color the epoxy so that it matches the color of the substrate. I have done a mother of pearl inlay in walnut, in mahogany, in ebony, and a number of different colored woods, and you can buy furniture powder in different colors. Here are two examples of black and burnt umber, and you can mix them to get the color that you want. And we also have a slide here that shows the colors that are available in furniture powders that you can order. This furniture powder is from Behlen, B-E-H-L-E-N. This is 1 ounce, and I guarantee you that this is enough furniture powder for me to last my entire life, and probably the life of my kids if they choose to do the same thing. A little bit goes a long ways. And I believe that Behlen is now known by a different name. And I'm trying to think what that name is. It'll be on the slide at the end of this presentation, and you can tell exactly where to get it. I'm going to go ahead and mix some epoxy now, and by all means, don't worry about mixing too much. Better to have too much and not need it than not enough and need it. So I'm going to mix enough epoxy to fill the entire pocket that I've created. And I will take some black furniture powder, just a little bit. That's too much. So furniture powder is just a pigment. It's not a dye, it's a pigment. So it's a powder material, a ground up material, and it's the material of choice for coloring, for custom mixing fillers for wood, for furniture, and it's easy to mix the pigments to get exactly the color you need in the furniture. Now we're ready to remove the backer from the mother of pearl inlay, and I see that in the water the backer has now separated from the mother of pearl. So I can take it out. Here's the backer, the cardboard, and here's the mother of pearl now held together by the tape. And so I'll dry that off. And I want to make sure that there isn't any adhesive or pieces of cardboard left on the back of the inlay. And it looks like it's clean. So that inlay is now ready to go into the pocket, and so it's time to fill the pocket with epoxy. And when you put the epoxy in, be generous. Make sure you get the epoxy in all the little openings. difficult to put too much epoxy in there, because anything that's not needed will be squeezed out. Okay, now it's time to put the inlay in. I'm going to leave it right on the tape. I'm going to set it in here, make sure that it seats down in the epoxy well. The epoxy's, the mother of pearl is in the proper orientation. And now I can clamp it in place, because I want that mother of pearl to sit down in the pocket, because we're going to be sanding that after we take it apart, and I don't want to sand through the mother of pearl. For a clamping call, I'm going to use polycarbonate, and I'm going to coat the polycarbonate with paraffin wax. That way there's no chance for the epoxy to adhere to the polycarbonate. And I will let that set overnight. After setting overnight, then I will remove the clamp. I will inspect the piece to make sure that there aren't any voids. If there are any little voids or bubbles in the epoxy, I will either mix up some additional epoxy to fill in, or you could also use medium weight cyanoacrylate glue to fill that void in. Let it set, and then I will sand the surface down. I will start off typically using 180 grit sandpaper, or Abranet. I prefer Abranet, and I will sand all the way down to 1000 grit. Now, a trick to keep in mind is that sometimes the sometimes the ebony that you get is not 100% black. You'll see some light lines, shades in there of grays, and it's very easy to take care of that simply by using either a trans-tint dye or liquid shoe polish on the black, and then that'll blacken up any of the lightness in the ebony. And once you have finished your sanding down to 1000 grit, the next thing to do is to put the finished piece into the recess in the top of the box, and then and I put that in either with wood glue, or you can use CA glue, and then I apply the finish of choice. I've already finished the box, so all I really need to do is just put a finish on the ebony and mother of pearl. You can use whatever finish you prefer. Some people like to spray a lacquer on it. Personally, I prefer to just use wax on the ebony. I'll put a little coat of wax on and buff it, and it'll shine up real nice, and that's exactly what is on this piece. It is just wax, and it shines very nicely. If you have any questions about what I've shown in this demonstration, I'd be glad to answer them. I think we have a live online event coming up in a few weeks. If you have questions that you want to send to me, My email address will be at the end of this video. Feel free to send me an email and I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have. So that's it for this demonstration, and hopefully we'll see many more videos from NWA in the future. Have a good day.